And we are reading with Robin here on behalf of my dear A Mighty Blaze family, which has been incredible. I feel like we've been family for years, not weeks. And thrilled to be hosting authors on Tuesdays on Pub Day, Publication Day. People think that means you go to the pub, which you could, but I've been told that people are a little confused. So here we are. I'm here to introduce our guest this afternoon. It's evening where Beth Morrey is, and her book, The Love Story of Missy Carmichael, is out today. I mean, is this the most gorgeous? It is poppin' blue, and it's just, you just want to grab and hold this book. And my intro is, Beth Morrey's work has been published in the Cambridge and Oxford May anthologies and shortlisted for the Gracia Orange First Chapter competition. She lives in London with her family and dog. The love story, of Missy Carmichael is her first novel, debut, nothing like a debut. Welcome to A Mighty Blaze.
Thank you, and shout out to A Mighty Blaze, they're great.
Aren't they great? And I'm sure everybody's lifting a glass to you. I'm lifting water because I'm over my coffee limit. There's like, time has stood still, but like I can tell when I've had too much coffee. What do you have in your lovely cocktail?
Well, I thought I'd treat myself to a little launch cocktail. So this is an Eastern Standard, which is what I'm perfecting at the moment. But I promise it is evening here. I'm not lunchtime drinking.
Beth, we do not judge. We do not judge, Beth. What's in it? What's in that?
This one has got gin, sugar syrup, lime, mint, and cucumber.
Oh, that sounds heavenly.
It's nice.
As water. I think Beth has just won.
Yeah.
I love where you're sitting. I love all your colors. You got up for a second and it looked like your skirt also coordinates with your room. How beautiful. I love that.
It's a sunny day, so I was feeling, quite upbeat.
I'm so glad. Well, it's a big day. And now, when did the book come out in the UK? Or it's
on February the 6th, so
okay.
It's been out a couple of months here.
And a different title? Is that where I saw?
Yeah, it's called Saving Missy in the UK, which is a slightly sort of simpler and more direct title, which they preferred, but I love both.
I love both too. So is that a thing in the UK? You prefer simpler, or?
I think they felt in the UK there might have been a few too many titles that were the something of somebody.
Oh,
and so they just wanted to be a bit different.
It's fascinating what happens with marketing, and it's, yeah, and they know what they're doing, and it's out by Putnam, which is one of my most favorite publishers, and it's the love story of Missy Carmichael. Beth Morrey is my guest. And I mean, first question when there's a debut, because there's nothing like a debut, and I've said it for many, many years, because then you get to introduce a new author to readers, and that's a joy of doing what I've been doing for all these years, is saying, hey, I know you don't know this book yet, unless you're pre-reading things or whatever. For the most part, here's a new author and a story that's going to resonate. The book clubs are going to eat this up, and there's so much to talk about. But what's it like for you having this book out in the world?
Well, it's very exciting. It's obviously very strange. It's not under quite the circumstances I imagined, but I am mainly just so thrilled and amazed, because when I wanted to be published, I imagined having my book in a UK bookshop, and that seemed a big enough dream. But then to think of it in a bookshop in New York or Washington or anywhere in the US just seems so dazzling. I can't quite get my head around it at all. But it's definitely a dream come true.
I'm so happy. Yeah. And when we can get out and about and be in the bookstores, I can't wait to see it out there. But I was telling you off air, when the galley, the early copy, arrived a long time ago, whenever it was, I just thought, you could just tell that this is a winner. I mean, it's just, look at this, and look at the dog.
It's such a gorgeous cover.
It is gorgeous. What kind of dog is that?
Well, she's of indeterminate parentage, but I imagine her as some sort of collie cross German shepherd.
Okay.
There's actually a dog in our local park that's an Australian shepherd that looks very like her. How I imagine her.
Was she modeled after somebody? Because you have a dog, or is it?
Well, I have a dog, but my dog is a black Labradoodle.
Oh, so now.
who's very aloof, not affectionate at all, like Bobby. So while my dog does appear in the book, but it's just a very brief cameo appearance to protect her privacy.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, authors often use family members in some way, but when there's a dog or a cat, there's an expectation that it's more them than not. So I'm glad that you've kept that distance.
Yes, it felt right.
The dog park, and everybody should go to bethmorrey.com for more information about the book, and also to find Beth on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram. Did I miss?
Yes, I am on Instagram as well as Beth Morrey.
Beth Morrey on Instagram. And I mean, what are you hearing from readers? Certainly there are early readers. And as you said, it came out in the UK, you know, a bit earlier. And while the title is different, the book is the same. So what have you been hearing from the readers?
I think the two things that make me the happiest, I mean, any nice review just makes you so thrilled and excited that it's resonated with a reader. But the two things that have made me happiest is when people say that they cried, because that feels very powerful. And another thing that I really like is when people say that it seems like a simple book, but it isn't. That makes me really happy.
Yeah, that's the thing about a book that could initially seem that way, is when you're reading it and the story goes deeper and deeper and really forces you to take a look at people in your own life and your own situations. It's way deeper. And that's why fodder for book club discussion. And a protagonist who, is she 80? She 80?
Yeah, she's approaching 80 when the book starts, and she turns 80 during the book.
So that's, you know, and that's something that it's amazing that people are so drawn to that, or it seems like, well, we don't see that a lot, because if we're lucky, we get to be those ages. So it's really not like, wow, somebody's 80, you know? So, so I liked seeing that too. And there's so many connections with people in our lives, ourselves, you know, just all of that. So when you started writing the book, what was the inspiration and, you know, just that first spark, and where does the book start for you?
Well, when I started, I just had two scenes in mind, and I thought I'll try and write those scenes and see where that takes me, because I didn't even know if I could write a whole book. And the two scenes were the opening scene, which is the fish stunning in the park where the fish get electrocuted. And I was interested in that because it happened for real in my local park. And I thought it was such a bizarre event, and people really turned up with drinks to sort of look and applaud.
Wow.
Stoke Newington people are just like that. And I thought it was such a bizarre event to kickstart a novel and to sort of shock a protagonist out of her self-pity and start her on a new path. So I quite like that idea. And then separately, I had this idea in that I was rather obsessed with this party that happened in Cambridge in 1956. And it's where Sylvia Plath met Ted Hughes. It's an incredibly famous party and was very drunken and dramatic, and Sylvia was supposed to have bitten Ted on the ear and drawn blood. They were two crazy poets. Yeah. And I was always obsessed with this party because my director of studies was actually at it and used to tell us about it.
Oh, wow, you got inside scoop about the party?
Yeah, it just sounded so incredible. Everybody was really wasted, and there were all these poets around declaiming poetry. And I thought, again, there's an electricity to that moment with these two intellectual powerhouses meeting. What if two other people met at the same party, but their lives went in a different direction? And so I imagined this couple, one of which was my protagonist, were meeting at this party. And then I thought, well, if she met her husband in 1956, then in 2016, when she goes to the fish stunning, well, do the maths, that makes her 80. And initially that seemed a bit like, oh, right, how do I do that? But then it became an opportunity because she'd have a long life to look back on and she'd be an interesting character. And that's how it started.
I love that. It's always fascinating to me where a story starts, or what has been in your head of like, maybe one day I can use this. I can only imagine having a professor share details about a party like that. Like, did you get a lot? Did you ask for more, or did they just share so much? Or I would have needed to hear, like, you walked in the door and then like sit and listen to the whole thing.
I went to visit her in Cambridge because although she told me about it when I was a student, I wanted to hear the full story again. So I went to visit her to ask for more details.
Oh,
and she gave me bits of gossip.
Oh, bits of gossip. And it's funny, is there like a time moratorium on bits of gossip, like where she might not have shared it then and in class, but then like, okay, now enough time has passed. Was she surprised you were so taken with the story? Had anybody else asked her for more?
No, I think we were all quite taken with the story because as students, we were all obsessed with Sylvia Plath. It's such a big thing. And, you know, Sylvia went to my college. And so, you know, we were all on her side rather than Ted's side. So we were all kind of into it. But I remember one detail she mentioned was that her friend who was crying that night lost an earring. And there was one version of the scene where Missy sees an earring on the floor. And in the end, it felt like it was too irrelevant, so it didn't really make it in. But I loved that idea of real life and fiction brushing up against each other.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was no reason why that couldn't happen.
Of course not, and you're writing it. So the earring had nothing to do with being bitten on the ear. Those are two different ear situations.
Two different ear situations.
Okay, trying
Right.
to draw a parallel. So there are no spoilers, and I'm talking with Beth Morrey. The love story of Missy Carmichael is out today. It is a debut novel, which is extra love, love, love. Go to bethmorrey.com for more information, and you can find her on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. I encourage Amazon Goodreads, awesome reviews, and follow, find, love, tags, and all of this stuff. You can feel free to drink. I'm like watching your drink. I'm like, we
I pace myself.
yeah, that's true. You're smarter than I. We had drinks. A Mighty Blaze. We were having drinks. Friday night, there was a Mighty Blaze. I'm thinking, when was I drinking? Because the other night I had an ice cream party. So I was eating ice cream with Susan Jane Gilman, but we had drinks, a cocktail party. And yeah, I didn't, you're sitting here, you don't realize how much you're drinking till you get up.
This really packs a punch, so I've got to be careful.
I love it. Maybe you could go back on a Mighty Blaze later and put your ingredients, because people will want to know, and perhaps a picture. See, there's homework to do after these interviews. It's not just like, okay, I wrote this book, I'm a debut novelist. Now you have homework. So set the story a little bit. We won't give any spoilers away. What should people know about the book?
So the book is about Missy Carmichael, who is a really spiky, defensive, and extremely lonely old woman who has kind of lost touch with society. She's mourning her husband, she's estranged from her daughter, her son and grandson have moved to the other side of the world, so she feels very alone. And there's also the sense that she very much feels that it's her fault. And then one day a chance encounter in the park at the fish stunning opens the possibility of friendship and a different life. But as she's very tentatively going towards these friendships and these new social opportunities, there's the sense that she's being held back by the mistakes she's made of her past. So you gradually reveal various secrets and mistakes that she's made.
It's always like something when I read about this sort of situation in a book, which is something that is always, regrets or the road not taken and all this, depending on how a reader reads, but the way this reader reads is then I go down my own rabbit hole, and then I'm like, back to the book, because we all have, there are choices, there are secrets, there are just the what ifs. And so that's one of the things I love about real character driven novels, which this is. And Missy's a librarian, and whenever a character is a librarian, and certainly we're readers and the authors, the library is important, but I love when a character is a librarian. And what were some of the characteristics or details about being a librarian that you poured into Missy?
Well, that's one of the things where she told me what she did rather than me making it up. So initially I was intending her to be an English scholar, because I did English. So I thought, well, write what you know. And it was her who said that, no, she did classics, which was a bit frustrating for me because I don't know anything about classics. So I had to do a lot of research. And again, when I was writing it and kind of thinking, did she have any kind of career? Because obviously her career prospects were frustrated by her marriage. Yeah. But it just felt natural and right that she was going to be a librarian. It was going to be an archival kind of role. And yeah, that just felt right to me, that Missy is so kind of buttoned up and rigid in certain ways that I imagine the kind of rigorous organization that you'd need, tempered with that love of literature and her interest in the classics, would be the natural thing for her.
Yeah, and as a reader, reading books where books play a central role and all of that, it just makes it even more fun. You know, it's bookishly bookish, I would say. And now your TV, you have a background in TV. So how was it different writing this way directly, you know, or how, you know, how are the two mediums similar, I guess, and what was not a challenge, but just a new skill set in writing the book?
Well, it was very helpful having worked in television, because one of the things that I had to do, I did TV development rather than production, which is thinking up ideas. And one of the things you have to do in TV development is think of something that's in the zeitgeist, things that people care about, things that people talk about, and then work out how to create an enriching story that's very accessible for people. And that was one of the things I did. And two of the shows that I developed were The Secret Life of 4-Year-Olds, which is about set in a nursery and focuses on children and how they interact naturally. And another show that I did was 100-Year-Old Drivers, which you can probably guess. And what 100-Year-Old Drivers taught me was that old people are fascinating and brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. If you get to be 100 and you're still driving, then you are a great character. And that helped me with my perspective of old people, that I didn't want to pander to Missy at all. I didn't want her to be doddery. I wanted her to be vigorous and alert and curious. So that was really helpful. And the other thing was that I write treatments for a living. And so I don't really get things, touch wood, I don't really get things like writer's block, because I'm kind of used to just churning stuff out, and I'm relaxed about just writing and seeing what happens. So that was really helpful. The thing that was weird and different is that in TV, particularly in development, you don't get a credit. So I could be solely responsible for writing and devising and getting commissioned a show, but I wouldn't get a credit.
I didn't realize that.
Well, I don't know if it might be different in America, but in the UK, you very rarely get a credit.
Oh, dear.
So you could be very heavily involved and nobody knows about it. Whereas with books, there's so many people who are involved in the creation of a book. My editor, my agent, publicists. And yeah, there's one name on the cover.
That's it. I love that.
That's weird, because it's kind of unfair both way rounds.
That's so interesting. Will you thank all of those people?
All the time.
Right.
A lot of them are in the acknowledgements.
Right, exactly, but they're not on here. But what is on here is a blurb from one of my very favorite dear authors, who said, "Here's a love story of the most important kind, that of coming to love oneself through accepting and returning the love of others, be it people or dogs. Inspiring, Elizabeth Berg," who is also a people and dog person. So, and I've hosted Elizabeth several times. And when I just thought that was such a beautiful,
and there's another aspect of the publishing world that's just so lovely, that all these authors take the time out of writing their own stuff, doing their own stuff to help other people. And again, in TV, you know, it's not that people are horrible about it, but you don't really get a producer taking time out to sort of say, "Oh, big shout out to my rival show."
Yes.
So the fact that authors do that for each other is such a lovely aspect of publishing, and one that, you know, I find very hard to get over. So many people gave up their time. It's really overwhelming.
There's a huge sense of giving back in the author community. And I mean, as we're sitting here in A Mighty Blaze, I can tell you that's how this whole thing came together.
Yeah.
And people in the industry and PR and marketing and website, really to put this together to help showcase authors, particularly debut authors, during this time of bizarre, you know, inability to do publicity the way normally it would be done. So meant so many authors who remember something kind done for them are really amazing at passing it forward. And Elizabeth has always been an incredibly generous soul, loving, just adore her. And so I was really glad to read that. And I'm speaking with Beth Morrey on Pub Day, Publishing Day, debut, and the book I keep showing everyone is a love story of Missy Carmichael. Who doesn't want a love story? This is a book to just cuddle up with, sink into, share it with your book clubs. And there's more and more reading happening now, right? We're home, we're in. What are you reading and what are you doing? What is this? Are you all also in lockdown? I know everybody's at a little bit of a different point.
Well, I'm finding it quite difficult to concentrate. I feel really distracted. I keep reading the news all the time. I'm trying to homeschool my kids.
Oh, yeah, that too.
So yeah, that's been quite a distraction. But I am lucky enough to get sent ARCs. So I've got quite a stack
Oh, good.
to get through. And at the moment, I'm reading a book by Hannah Begbie called Blurred Lines, which is coming out later this year. And I've just finished The Silent Treatment by Abby Greaves, which I think is published today as well.
I think so, yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, which is another great love story.
Will you be kind enough when you post your drink, will you also post those titles?
I will, yes.
Yeah, people just love to know what the authors are reading. It's such a fun thing to be able to share. And I hear you about being distracted, which is why which I am. And when I'm reading, I want to read books like this, you know, where I'm
thinking too.
Yes. And I also love, you know, I could also get into a thriller or whatever right now, but I don't know. It's just sort of a comforting book, like an Elizabeth Berg book would be, comforting and making you sort of feel like everything will be okay. And that's what books do in community. And the authors are connecting with the book clubs more and more. Go to bethmorrey.com. Is there book club information there or did I just make that up?
Not on my website, no, but I would be happy to respond to book club requests and questions.
Sometimes I make stuff up here on A Mighty Blaze, but go to bethmorrey.com for more information and find her on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram and shout out about these books. That's what we're sharing with people. It's so important. And I will put a plug in for bookshop.org. And a lot of people are suggesting if you want to support the indies, that's a good place to go. And post about the books and leave good reviews on Goodreads and Amazon. I could have said leave reviews on Goodreads and Amazon, but I meant that. Leave good reviews on Goodreads and on Amazon. And so excited for you. I'm thrilled to be here with you today on your pub day. And I could keep talking, but we're keeping it going. We've got like 7 shows today, so it's crazy. And you've still got more to drink, so you enjoy that. Pardon?
I've got a little bit more for my living room launch party.
Oh, good. Well, you enjoy and be in touch and all the best. It's The Love Story of Lucy Carmichael by Beth Morrey. And, just put this one on your list. You're going to love it. Beth, thank you so much for sharing Pub Day with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Cheers.
Cheers.